more people making music, having more tools that make it easier for them to make great music, and more derivative works, like more great music out there and more people making music, that will grow the pie of the music industry. Great. We should all be big fans of that, and then say, all right, well, what are the downsides and how might we best mitigate them? For example, like how might we fairly compensate artists whose work has gone into creating those models that allow other people to make work, whether you can tell by listening to it that that artist's work fed it or not. Logically, there's some credit that should go back to the original work that trained the model. So it's going to grow the pie. I think we should all say, how can we help the pie to grow? And then we should all also say, like, how can we do that in as fair a way as possible? And then let's talk about the like language model side, on the kind of writing and thinking side, which could be songwriting or writing music, or it could be business and planning your career or marketing yourself, or getting your music heard by building connections with the industry. Like language models like ChatGPT are much more clearly a positive in the world, like much more clearly transformative to our abilities to do our jobs, to get ourselves marketed, to communicate with people in the world, and to write useful content. Clearly transformative. Studies show they're massively beneficial in making you faster and better and have more fun while you do that work as well. And so on that side, you've got the same ethical issues, which is, I'm writing this report or I'm trying to get marketed. It was trained on some other people's original content. I still should be worried about how they get paid for training the model. But my view there, much more clearly, is that the societal good from transformative new technologies for literally billions of people for free, the societal good from that is so big, it's so clear that we have to allow it and find ways to compensate the original creators of work, but we can't let that get in the way of the societal benefit. I think you'll find the same logic works on the music and sound side as well, but I'll let greater minds worry about that. But clearly they're both transformative. Clearly we should be excited about both of them, but clearly we should also think about the consequences and fair pay for people whose work has fed the models.
Right. We do need to figure out how best to think about compensation. I know that artists like Grimes have come out and say, hey, I'll split 50-50 with whatever you come out with. I'm not here to say whether 50-50 is the right or wrong split, but it's that type of approach that we need to explore and we need to think about, because there should be some type of interest. There should be some type of play that makes it interesting. And for a lot of fans, honestly, that want to do this stuff, compensation may be important to some of them. Compensation may not be important to some of them. So there's different considerations on their side as well. Something I've thought a lot about with this topic is the scrutiny or the test that we are putting generative AI or any of the language models to relative to actual people. There's been, of course, concerns about, okay, well, if you say that there's one artist in particular that this large language model was based on to help generate these song lyrics for this person, then it's easy to relatively see where the consideration and where the attribution should go to. But the challenge could potentially come if you say you want something to generally sound like a top 40 hit from 2021, then what do you do? So I've heard that feedback and I understand it. That said, even the actual artists themselves have plenty of people that inspire their music, but that didn't always necessarily have the direct compensation there. Like, for instance, if someone like Olivia Rodrigo says that, oh, my biggest inspirations growing up were Taylor Swift or Beyonce or Pink or any of these other singers and songwriters, Madonna and folks like that that came before her, that doesn't mean that they necessarily get a share of her royalty and splits like that. So there's certain considerations where it can be tough. And that's not saying that those artists need to, but it's an example of how sometimes we can hold technology to a higher threshold of scrutiny than sometimes we do actual artists themselves and the human side of the industry.
It reminds me a bit of conversations in the early 2000s around, and I don't know if this happened anywhere in the world, but like a tax on CDs, or blank CDs, that would go back to the music industry. So, every time someone copies music, they're using blank CDs. Why don't we just take X% of sales of blank CDs and just blanket give it to the music industry? It's a bit like that, right? Every time, language model revenue is X this year, why don't we take a certain percent of it, give it back to music, certain percent give it to books, certain percent give it to movies, something like that.